Most people believe that motivation, discipline, and productivity are psychological traits. We assume that if someone is struggling to focus or struggling to follow through with their goals or change their life, that must be a mindset problem or laziness. But what if I told you the real limitation is biological? What if the capacity to build a meaningful life depends on something much more fundamental? Cellular energy. In this series, we're going to explore a simple but powerful idea. Your life is not only shaped by your mindset, it is shaped by your biological capacity. And biological capacity begins with energy. Let's start with a simple, basic biologic fact. Your brain represents only about 2% of your body weight, but it consumes roughly 20% of your body's resting energy. That means the brain is one of the most energy demanding organs in the human body. Every thought you have, every decision you make, every emotion you attempt to regulate requires energy at the cellular level. And inside each of these cells are structures called mitochondria. Now, their job is to convert nutrients and oxygen that you eat and breathe into ATP, which is a molecule that your cells use for energy. Now, ATP powers everything that your body does. It is, again, the currency for your body. But what many people don't realize is that higher level brain function are some of the most energy demanding processes in the body. Things like attention, emotional regulation, impulse control, planning for the future, learning new habits. These processes require significant amounts of energy. So when energy production becomes unstable, the brain doesn't simply continue functioning the same way. It has to adapt. And the way it adapts is that it prioritizes survival functions first and higher order thinking last. Now, your brain is constantly allocating energy to different processes. When energy availability is stable, the brain can support function associated with the prefrontal cortex. Now, that's the part of your brain responsible for decision making, long term planning, behavior control, and goal oriented thinking. Now, in many ways, the prefrontal cortex is what allows human beings to build complex lives. But the prefrontal cortex is extremely energy sensitive. So when metabolic energy becomes unstable from things like poor glucose regulation, chronic stress, inflammation, poor sleep, the brain shifts energy away from higher order function. Instead, it prioritizes systems related to immediate survival. This includes emotional reactivity. So now you react way more significantly to maybe small events, right? Threat detection, so you're constantly in a state of zoning, looking around, making sure that there's no threat around. We call it vigilance. And short-term reward seeking, like craving sugar to get that quick burst of energy. So from the outside, it may look like someone lacks discipline. But from a biological perspective, what may actually be happening is that the brain no longer has the metabolic capacity to sustain higher order control. This leads to an important idea. Energy, or the reliability of energy, determines capacity. Your capacity to regulate emotions, your capacity to think clearly, your capacity to learn, your capacity to persist towards a long-term goal or discipline. All of these depend on biological energy availability. This is why people under chronic stress often experience mental fatigue, difficulty concentrating, impulsive decision making, and emotional volatility. Right? They have a tendency to fly off the handle, short fuse, not because they lack character, but because their biological systems are under strain. Think about this. When we talk about human potential, we often focus on mindset or motivation, but those things are expressions of something much deeper. They are expressions of capacity. Capacity is the range of behavior your brain can sustain over time. If biological energy is unstable, your capacity narrows. People become reactive. They focus on immediate relief rather than long-term growth. But when physiology stabilizes and energy production improves, something interesting happens. People often rediscover their sense of curiosity, creativity, discipline, and even being able to establish a vision, because the brain once again has the metabolic resources to support those functions. This is the central idea for this series. Cellular energy is the biological currency that funds human capacity. In the next episodes, we're going to explore the systems that influence that energy. We'll talk about the mitochondria and energy production, blood sugar regulation and how that affects the brain, dopamine and motivation, stress and metabolic demand, and the gut-brain connection. Because if we want to understand human potential, we need to understand the biological systems that support it. Before you design your life, before you pursue purpose, before you expect discipline from yourself, you must first build the biological foundation that supports those capacities. Because the life you build is ultimately shaped by the energy your biology can sustain. Build your life from the inside out.